Hi everyone, it's Michelle here from Paranoid Founders, offered by Contingent, where we specialize in business insurance. Today, I'm very excited to introduce to you Alison, the CEO of Curves Malaysia. Alison has brought this franchise of a women-only fitness concept to Malaysia. It's from the US. Welcome to the show, Alison.
Thank you, Michelle.
Maybe we can start by talking about your experience. How did you come about the brand and how did you decide to bring it to Malaysia?
It was quite accidental. I didn't have plans to be an entrepreneur, not even necessarily to be in fitness. I started in corporate, working for one of the big four accounting firms overseas. And my parents said, hey, come back to Malaysia for a little while. So I said, okay, sure. And I popped back. When I landed in Malaysia, I followed my mom to a conference the next day where I met the CEO of a big fitness chain and got myself a job in their finance team. So I said, okay, this is a really interesting industry. I spent a few years there. That's how I got into the fitness industry. I realized that this is such a great preventive, like good vibes always. And it's really about making people healthy and aware of their health early on. So that's how I started in the fitness industry. From there, I was encouraging family and friends to join me. I started getting into my workouts as well. A person that's very important to me is my mom. And my mom, like many moms, had spent the last few decades raising kids, focusing on her career and her business. She was starting to get aches and pains and putting on weight. My eldest brother, who's a doctor, was also like, Mom, only you can look after your own body. I encouraged her to join the gym. But she said, oh, Alison, this is not really my scene with all these big, muscly bodybuilders. And everyone there looks so super fit already. It's a bit intimidating. So she joined a small studio near her office. And she had a trainer and she was doing weights because strength training is important. However, they kept pushing her and she said, I don't feel so good. And they said, it's okay, Auntie, just keep pushing. She actually got a slip disc out of that and was almost paralyzed from the neck down. It was a very traumatic experience. And we felt so upset for her because she had a healthy body. She just wanted to get a bit healthier and a bit fitter. But this happened to her. She had to go for a lot of physio. She was on traction for 6 months. Finally, she got better and she felt good. She visits my cousin, Debbie, who lives in Australia. And at that time, my cousin was a busy mom and all of that, but she looked really great and had such vitality. My mom was like, hey, Debbie, what are you doing that's different? I found this thing called Curves. When my mom, Margaret, saw it, she was so excited because it's just such a warm, welcoming place. Women of all fitness backgrounds, of all ages coming together. And it only took 30 minutes, which was like music because aren't we all so busy, right? So that's how we got to know the concept. After that, we pursued it further, but at that time, Curves wasn't coming into Asia yet. It was going to the Europe, UK, etc., and Australia. So forgot about it, went about my career and everything. And I guess serendipity, one day, Gary Haven was traveling through Asia. Gary Haven is our founder, and he said, hey, yeah, why aren't we in Southeast Asia? And sort of dug through the website of Leeds, and I had inquired about Curves many years ago. And I met with Gary and his sales director, and we all just fell in love with each other. He liked my fitness background. He liked my mom's business background. And we just fell in love with him and his mission of strengthening women. So we're like, okay, this is it, match made in heaven. And we were awarded the master for the Malaysia territory. Very excited, but not knowing the journey that laid ahead and the challenges that would come with it.
And that's like almost a decade ago now.
And it's astounding sometimes when I think about how long it's been, but then I look back and every few years, the dynamics have changed, the business has changed. So I think it is a journey and it's being that kind of resilient mindset as well.
Yeah.
On the way.
Thank you for sharing that. For some entrepreneurs, starting a business can be a very personal one. It's driven by an experience that you had that was maybe not so fantastic and trying to change that circumstance, not just for your family, but for people all around the world, all around Malaysia.
Yeah, what my mom went through. And when we saw Curves, this concept, we realized it's not just what my mom needed. It's something that many of us need, right? Even myself, prior to joining the fitness industry, I actually not into fitness. My friends all laughed when I joined this big company, but it's through being exposed to it and taking down those barriers of intimidation that you realize, hey, this is so important. This is really about looking after ourselves. And I always believe, and this is why we say at Curves, our tagline is strengthening women, because a woman, she's like the center of her family, of her community. She makes so many decisions around how the family eats, what they do together, how active they are. We always think if she's strong, she's just going to be a better mom, a better colleague, a better daughter. She has the power to affect those around her.
Yeah, and that has multifold impact to the community and to
Yes.
everyone around. Amazing thing that you've achieved here. And we're going to dive straight into the first segment of what we're going to talk about, because we normally talk about revenue, systems, and people. For you, it's probably very natural to talk about something from a monetary perspective, considering your background in finance and being an accountant.
Yes.
So maybe we can start with something challenging. Today, Curves has many outlets.
Yes.
When you were looking at expansion, or even when you started the business, what were some of the challenges that you had to face financially, especially during the growth phase? Maybe we can talk a bit about the growth and then going through the pandemic and where you are today.
I think starting with outlet number one was with excitement and naivete, for sure. That was self-funded. My mom is my first shareholder. It's always been self-funded for two of us. The first outlet was really successful from day one. We were supported by Curves International with the systems, the equipment, etc. So it was a lot of hands-on learning, and me being a manager, basically every day I knew every member's name. Of course, on my team, I recruited them and we were together all the time. I did all the pre-marketing. So no one knew what Curves was. Even back then, 10 years plus ago, the fitness industry was really different. We only had bigger players and not many boutique options. We barely had social media. I think Facebook was around, but more on the social level, not really for business. So it was a lot of old school marketing, handing out flyers, that kind of thing. But it was successful from day one. So we were very encouraged. And we almost immediately started franchising out because some of our early franchisees had seen the brand in the US and in Australia, and they were just so excited. Some of the early members that joined us were really passionate about the fitness concept, the 30-minute concept, women only. And that is how we started growing. I think within 2 years, I opened my second outlet, which did very well. Because we're selling memberships, it's pretty much a cash business.
Yeah.
We sell on recurring memberships. And with my accounting background, understanding the business model is extremely important. We fell in love with Gary. We fell in love with his mission. Without the business model, if it wasn't solid, we wouldn't have gone into this venture. Yeah, it wasn't just about, oh, I'm passionate about fitness. It's more like I'm passionate about making sure this works, right? Because this is our savings that we're putting into the business. So second outlet did really well, still around to today. It's one of my best outlets. It's growing and we were getting more interest. Then I opened the third outlet in year 3 or year 4. At that time, I was pregnant. Then I felt it was getting hard to scale. Yeah. With one outlet, you're there every day. With 2 outlets, you're going back and forth. With 3 outlets, it's really hard to start splitting your time and traveling around and managing franchisees as well. That was the first big challenge, which I didn't realize till my daughter turned 1. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm on the borderline of suffering burnout, trying to juggle so many things. The most important for the revenue aspect is understanding the business model. And for us, it was memberships, understanding the recurring nature, and making sure the billing went through. A lot of people make the mistake to say, oh yeah, I have this many customers, I'm going to earn this much. But you don't earn it if you're not able to collect it or get through the card. So we're really on top of that all the time. And if we are not collecting, we reach out to the member as well. Because sometimes it could be a genuine thing, something happened, a lost card expiry. And they're so kind. A lot of the members are, oh my goodness, I didn't realize they'll come in, etc. You just don't want to be in a situation where it lapses and then months can go by or something like that.
And is that something that you've learned from your previous experience that you knew about already? Or is it something that has been supported a lot by Curves?
I think I knew a bit about that from my previous exposure because the company I was with, they do a lot of recurring memberships as well. You could see the trends between debit card collection and credit card collection and then prepaid memberships, which I know a lot of fitness studios do the prepaids. And it's good because you have the cash up front, but then you're going to make sure you really manage the cash. If not, a lot of people get caught with their pants down. But I think to support that is your own internal processes, which is a whole other pillar.
Do you want to share a little bit more about the immediate challenges you faced when the
Yes.
pandemic kicked in, where people were stuck at home and they could no longer go to your outlets? And like, what did you do to change things around?
Yeah. When the pandemic hit, which was 2020, we were actually riding on quite a high. Outlets were all very smooth, systematic. Things were going well. And we were about to open another outlet in March 2020. But we kept having delays because of this so-called virus that was delaying shipments and things like that.
Yeah.
When it hit, I remember the government saying it's just 2 weeks, right? So my team were amazing. They immediately started filming some videos, which we sent to members. We used WhatsApp, etc., to communicate, Facebook as well to communicate that. And I think there was no issue. Everyone was fine with that. But then the government said, hey, another 2 weeks. And that's when we said, okay, let's start doing live workouts. I'm sure like everyone else, we're all scrambling to learn Zoom and to teach our members how to use Zoom and things like that. But it was amazing. We actually had live workouts done in the morning and evening every day. And we would have 200 plus women join us a day. And it was our way of keeping that social connection. Similarly, when you enter Curves, we know our members' name. We'll say hello to them. We'll say goodbye to them. On Zoom, we were trying to replicate that feeling, and that the instructors would reach out and say the member's name and create that community in a virtual setting. And I think there was a real craving by the members as well to feel like they were still connected with others. Yeah. So that was helpful. And we actually kept our membership going throughout that period, but we reduced the membership, right?
So you voluntarily offered to reduce the membership for all your
members, but we said we're offering this, and it was amazing. They really supported us. I think that was one of the things about being a boutique kind of studio, like the relationship is quite close and they were happy to support, and that kind of kept us through, because often we were open and closed for 9 months over the 2 years. Definitely challenging, but reflecting on that, I think during that time we didn't even have a moment to think. It was just everyday team huddle. Everyone just pitched in and got things done and learned so quickly. Those live workouts really captured that relationship to keep it going.
And I guess from a company perspective, with the reduction in membership and revenue, like, did that have any impact to the company operations?
Yes. I think number one was me on the phone with landlords. Yeah, that was the main thing. We didn't want to touch salaries and stuff like that, but we knew the revenue was cutting. And I think the other thing to learn is you always need a cash buffer. I remember prior to COVID, one of my mentors actually said she has about 12 months worth of expenses.
It's like how, as individuals, we have our emergency funds.
I remember thinking, who has that much cash just sitting around idle? But we learned the value of that. I think that was a really important lesson, to always have some cash buffer. This pandemic was unprecedented. So we had to act quickly. Most of our landlords were very supportive. They did give discounts. And I think that was off the back of years of relationship with them, and we always pay on time. One of my personal things running the business, I always pay staff on the 26th, and I always pay my landlord on time, so that when the pandemic did happen, I could see that sort of empathy back, I suppose, from both landlords and the team, because the team had to work so hard as well.
What were some of the key challenges that you faced during the pandemic?
I think the main one is the uncertainty, not knowing when we could reopen, looking at cash all the time. That was really critical to budget out. We think we're going to get this much, because even though a lot of members supported us, some members went through hardship as well. They lost jobs and canceled their membership. So we kept looking at the cash. Secondly, being very proactive as well to see what government support there was. I think the government did do a lot of good things as well for small businesses. So there was the wage subsidy, the relief fund loan, things like that. And I know a lot of my SME friends did get it as well. What that taught me was your books have to be in order. At the end of the day, for example, the relief loan fund, it's going through banks. So banks will still have to do their assessment, review your accounts. If you haven't been keeping proper records and all this kind of thing, how would they the confidence? Exactly. I always thank my lucky stars, because in the early days I wasn't mindful of making sure everything was properly documented, but the last few years I had really been on top of it, so that when we needed to apply, everything was just there. If they needed any document, I could easily pull it out from our systems. The government support did help a lot. During that time, the fitness industry banded together. We've never actually had a representation before. I think everyone, there's the big boys and there's a lot of boutiques and different types. Fitness is so big. And a lot of us got together to lobby at Putrajaya, which was very interesting.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, they didn't open us any earlier because our industry was always lumped with like beauty, entertainment. So we were one of the last to reopen. But it was a good experience for me. Everyone's working together for the common goal. We were saying, hey, this is fitness, this is helping people get healthy. But I guess everyone was scared at that time. So we just had to do what we could do.
Yeah. So I guess there are 3 or 4 key takeaways of things that you remember from the pandemic challenges. Being proactive, like in reaching out, being a great employer, being a great client, and hoping that like people reciprocate the kindness back to you. And I guess always be kind to people, keeping your books in order.
Yes. That one was, I was like thanking my staff for that.
Yeah. And I guess one more is that cash buffer situation. I guess that's important for a lot of businesses because you never know what happens. For small and medium businesses, I think you're always in a position that there's a high risk for your business.
Yes.
Like for large businesses, they have ways to weather through storms.
Yes.
Yep. And we can hit small businesses harder. So having that buffer for yourself will be important regardless of what situation that you're put in.
And I think one more that I look back is having the right mentors or other businesses around you, because I was very lucky. I had one mentor that I reach out to him off and on. He would tell me, Alison, the water is rising, right? You just have to maintain your mouth and your nose above the water level. You must keep looking at your metrics because the moment it has reached your mouth, you're going to likely to drown very quickly. If you need to make certain cuts or sacrifices or delays, you have to be on top of that straight away. Having other people who've been through tough times in their entrepreneurial journey really helps to have that support as well.
How do you find this mentor? As we've spoken about just now, the road of entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey.
Yes.
And a lot of times you have to rely on people like mentors and advisors who are doing it for us out of the goodness of their heart.
Yes.
To help other people go through the challenges that they've been through before. So for people who are starting this journey or people who have been on this journey alone for a really long time, like where do they go to look?
There's actually quite a few business networks. I joined one the year before the pandemic and more on like for social actually. I thought it would be nice to meet other people in business, similar age, that kind of thing, and then learn from the mentors. And during that program, I was paired with a mentor who runs a manufacturing company. I thought, why on earth am I paired with him? Because it's such a different industry. But it was the best thing because everyone has their journey and a good mentor doesn't necessarily tell you what to do, but it's more like sharing and guidance. Yeah, reassurance and not being lonely. Recently, I've joined another business network, which is much more business focused. So you're in a group of like 10 to 15 people. You're treated like this is your board of directors. They're even there to poke holes in whatever your idea, your proposal. But it's actually appreciated because I realize sometimes you're so into your perceived problem, they help you process the issue. That's been very helpful. But aside from that, I realized that there's so much resource now online that didn't exist 10 years ago, especially like your podcast and personal finance. There's so much information and good people you can learn from that you don't necessarily have to know them personally. But it is really helpful to listen to what they've been through. I myself consume podcasts and short videos. It does help seep into the brain.
I think similar story for me as well. When you are a business owner, there's no one really on top. Like for your team, they have a manager they can learn from, and managers have like the boss to learn from. But for us, like there isn't really someone who you can directly learn from within your work journey. So we often have to seek out. It makes sense to have both available. Someone who you can call and speak to and hopefully have gone through challenges that can share like their experience with you, and then you can digest that and filter what works for you. And the other one would be resources that are just abundant today. From podcasts, videos, from all around the world. I think today it's just so easy to learn from all the great leaders. But I guess the challenge that we'll have today is that there's so much information and so much that's contradictory. So how do you filter them so that they work for you? Or else if you absorb everything, then you realize that shucks, like I'm doing right and wrong simultaneously.
Yes, it is so hard. Yesterday I was in one of the business network meetings, which is like a whole day affair because we have learnings and we get guest speakers and then we have issue processing and sharing. And I'm always excited because I love learning. But at the end of the day, I'm just depleted, exhausted, and overwhelmed. Like I haven't done this, I haven't done that. I'm trying to remind myself is at the end of the day, you know yourself best and your business best, and it's never going to be a to-do list you can finish. Just pick your top 3-4 priorities and believe in yourself. I think that comes with time. I look back at my early days, I treated it very much like a corporate thing. If I do this, I will get this. If I do this step, I'll get promoted. With one outlet, yes, but beyond one outlet, that kind of approach doesn't work, because I think there's always going to be issues coming up that you didn't anticipate, and there's no black and white answer. You have to dig deep and believe what you're doing is the right answer for now and go with it.
I like that, and I think that segues nicely into our next segment, which is systems. Some of the systems were already set up by Curves. So we can talk about systems plus like the operational side of things. And I want to talk a little bit more about what you just shared. So when you open your first outlet and second outlet, was still easier to manage relatively to what it is today.
Yes.
But when you open your third and fourth and fifth outlet, like what did you have to change about how you manage things, how do you approach operations and people that you wouldn't have known with your first outlet?
Biggest milestones and breakthrough for me was understanding people better, right? Beyond my first team. Because one team is easy in the sense that you see each other every day, you have touch points every day. But as you grow, you don't necessarily see everybody. And I remember, I think when I realized it is my job as the leader to empower, to work through, and I have to work with the people I have. It's my job to level them up to what my expectation is. So I think creating corporate culture, so stuff like core values, which I used to think, it's a piece of paper on the wall. But as I understood it more, I do think it is very important, and it should be applied during interview stage, onboarding stage, during town halls, especially like pandemic and stuff like that. We would have a lot of virtual town halls. Always linked it back to the core values of what we were going through. That helped create that culture of what I wanted from them and what they could expect from me as well. And then also not taking it too personally if people leave. I think we all go through that. If someone leaves your business and you're like, oh, why? I thought everything was good. But I always say when you're here with me, I'll give my best to you. I expect you to give your best to me. If we do part ways, it's okay. I wish you the best in your next endeavor. And we've had people leave and come back as well, which is wonderful. I think culture is very, very important based around the core values.
Yeah. And how do you learn all about like building culture? Was it something that you had to learn along the way?
Definitely. One of the earliest resources, I think, is BFM. I started listening to them on the radio, and they always interviewed entrepreneurs. They would have events like Enterprise Breakaway. When I started listening to others, that's when I said, oh, wow, I'm noticing a consistent trend amongst different speakers, and culture was one of it. Because I think back then everyone would complain, oh, millennials, and now everyone's complaining about Gen Z. And I'm like, that's so funny because that was us a few years ago. But it's about connecting with your team and what they want.
I connect with a lot of things you said. For example, core values, it was important to us as well. Sometimes it's a chicken and egg thing. Like if it's just two co-founders writing core values on the wall, okay, you don't really know where the business is going yet. Things change a lot. So after a year, we decided it was time for us to encapsulate what we want into core values. Although the team already knows, but it's good to put that into words and use that continuously in your sessions with your team and your town halls and for us all hands. We had an exercise where we went for an offsite and we got the team to come out with the core values together.
Oh, nice.
So we split them into like teams of 4, and then everyone needs to come up with 4 core values, explain, and we gave them some of the keywords that we wanted or ideas we had. That's how we create our core values, and that's something we still have today. I resonate a lot with core values, and I like one of the interviews we recently did, we spoke about core values. It's a theme that continues to resonate, and I think for small businesses, medium-sized businesses, it continues to be very important to hold on to those core values. That helps drive your business and helps your team understand the direction. When they lose their way, they know where to come back to.
Yes, I think so. And it starts with us being the founder.
I guess going back to the more technical system side of things, I suppose you had a lot of support from Curves, but maybe you can walk us through, were there any other challenges that you faced when it came to scaling your business in Malaysia? Were there things that didn't exist that you had to request for, or things that you had to build or do differently?
Definitely, we've been supported a lot of the database system and things like that. It's all proprietary to Curves. The flip side, though, is that sometimes it's frustrating because we can't change things or modify things too much. So That's the not so great aspect of being part of that system. I think locally, I like to use a lot of free things. So WhatsApp, it's been wonderful to just have fast reporting, fast communication, because most of my team, they're coaches, right? So they're busy, they're on the circuit, they should not be on their phone and things like that. But that being said, I think physical still is critical. Yeah, it's still critical. So a lot of traditional things like still having weekly meetings, month-end managers meetings, it's all still physical, and I treat it as an opportunity to have a bit of social time together as well. So like end of month, we'll always have a managers meeting. Everyone can come to office, the HQ, and have a nice lunch, and then we'll get into the sticky business. Yeah. Things like that. We use Google Sheets a lot of Google Forms, Google Sheets,
Yeah.
things like that.
How do you navigate some of the local customizations that you need to support the business share locally compared to other markets?
I think still having to rely on Excel. Actually, Excel can be very powerful. Downloading the relevant things from the curve system and then putting it into the reporting formats that we need. I feel a lot of those calls and things like that, we used to, and we still do sometimes get in the traps of having long meetings and all that kind of stuff. But getting better and better to just focusing on like certain key metrics, and like our meeting should be 30 minutes and done. Unless you got issue, let's talk about the issue.
Even with the proprietary system you have, and I think that's a very sophisticated system to manage your members and your customers. From a business operations perspective, it's all about experimenting what works for you, what works locally for the market, because there's no one size fits all. Let's say WhatsApp wouldn't really work in like other markets that doesn't use WhatsApp, for example. So that's something that you learn that, okay, can't use our system for that. Like, I need to connect with my coaches, and hence like the solution is to just use WhatsApp, which everyone uses here. And Excel for certain customizations you need for the business. And I guess on the topic of people coming from a background of numbers and finance and accounting, and obviously going into business, that can be quite natural. But then managing a group of people who are probably not in that space. How did you find these people? And what did you have to learn about leadership, managing people that was very different from what you've had experienced before?
I think it's quite different. I was used to working with a lot of accountants, corporate people, etc. Most of my team are graduates in sports science, physio, or even customer service-based background. I think that the key thing was realizing like I'm here to pass what I know to them as well. I've been very privileged. I have a strong mom who was a career woman and taught me so many things. I see it as my role to share with them because they may not have had that exposure. Secondly, with corporate culture, I realized we need to do fun stuff as well. Usually every quarter we will do some sort of team get together. The most recent, we did painting together and had lunch. We've done like fun run together. We've done bowling, a lot of just short, fun things, but it's a chance to relax a little, get to know each other better. I think that's important as well. And just having that empathy, I suppose, to really be active listening to what they're going through as well. Because if I think about it, it's easy to be behind a laptop, behind Excel, but they are facing customers. And whilst we have 99% really wonderful ladies, of course, in any customer facing business, there will be days where you've had a difficult customer or a complaint or something.
Yeah. I think when it comes to consumer businesses, it can always be extremely draining. Everyone has their own lives. So you don't know what's going on in other people's lives, and maybe they just had a really bad day. So it's not a reflection of ourselves or how they are behaving, I suppose, but it's an art and science of how you can manage it when you are dealing with direct customers.
They often say, and as long as you have more than one person, there's just going to be politics and potential conflict, right? Because we're all different. So I think learning how to navigate that and knowing ourselves again, I think managing that. A lot of my team are very young. This could be their first job. A lot of them are like below 30, although I would say a lot of them have been with me so long, they're not spring chickens anymore. But to me, they're forever like 25, maturing with them and helping them grow a bit and grow up as well, and realizing the world is full of different people.
And if you don't mind sharing, what was something that you had to learn through making a mistake when it came to people or like leadership?
I think check and balance needs to be there. One of the very painful experiences for me was I had a very good staff member who was with us for quite some time. She was great. Members loved her. I loved her. And I realized that she was doing a bit of dodgy misreporting, right? And it was quite a shock to me and a betrayal again. So like later I realized, don't take it so personally. She was probably going through something. But having systems that check and balance, and the team needs to know there is check and balance. Sometimes it's that perceived knowing the structures are in place. That's been very important. And a lot of communication, even though we use WhatsApp a lot and it's great, things can be misconstrued. Yeah, like the tone and everything. Sometimes I could be having a bad day and I answer a bit blunt, then they all freak out. Is Alison mad about something? So I think try to communicate as much as possible.
Communications, especially in most work environments, are high stress, especially when you're dealing with end customers. Like there are days where, like you said, can be a tough day, and when you send a text, you don't really read it through, and then people may misconstrue it. And then the one good thing that people can do is if they feel like you're being too blunt or aggressive, they can bring it up and say, okay, like I didn't appreciate that, and that didn't come from a place of empathy.
Yeah.
And for us, like one thing that we always talk about is when it comes to resolving conflict, or like when we deal with situations like this, we should always prioritize face-to-face conversation first.
Yes.
And if that's not possible at the point of time, then it should be a phone call.
Yeah.
Like voice phone call.
Yeah.
And the last one should be a text. Because in the format of text, like things can be understood so differently.
Yes.
And the person who's reading it and the person who is typing it can have a completely different way of reading how it was written.
Yes.
I definitely agree with communication. It's so hard, especially with younger people who it's their first job. They've never been in an environment that is so diverse and so different, where they're challenged every day, and they're faced with not just people they have to report to, like my manager, but also like customers. So they're squeezed from both ends.
A lot of our team, because if it's their first job, they're just unsure of themselves, of course. And I just hope to draw that out. Like, you have to believe in yourself and don't worry about making mistakes. Although I know we all worry about making mistakes. Yeah. So I think that's where we must communicate, as we say. It's not easy in this time for environment. A text is just so much faster, isn't it? But sometimes we have to make the call. And even with the customer, not often, but once in a while, we'll get an email through our website and someone might have a complaint about something. And I'll ask my senior manager to call. And it's almost always resolved because that customer just wanted someone to listen to her about something, or that something was misunderstood. Yeah. And I feel like that's probably 90% of all miscommunications in the workforce as well.
I guess on the topic of people, like your customers and your clients are a big part of that. Like how has that journey been like for you in your previous work experience? Did you have to do a lot of like customer facing type of work? I suppose not really,
No,
right?
no.
Yeah, so this must have been a crazy new experience for you, like having to deal with customers, especially like when you were extremely hands-on.
Yes.
In like your first couple of
outlets.
Yes. Even maybe until now, you still are.
Yes.
So can you walk us through how do you manage that, like people side of things when it comes to
Yeah, definitely that was a challenge, especially like my first role was in an accounting firm. It's all like B2B and it's all very corporate. So when I started running my first outlet, I'm quite a people person, so I do love getting to know our customers. The flip side of that is if a woman is upset, and I say this as a woman, she could go on and on, or sometimes like, it's funny, I think being a boutique fitness studio, it's almost sometimes like running a hair salon, or like the relationship they're here to share with you, and we get to know so much about their lives. But I tell my team, and myself included, we have to draw a line as well, because number one, they're here for their 30-minute workout. So that is the brand promise. And when you're coaching on the circuit, you are the coach, you're the leader of the circuit. So you got to focus on that. But of course, a bit of relationship after and a bit of a chat is fine, but don't make it into a woman's chat club. And dealing with customers, sometimes the complaints or whatever, if they're upset about something that is difficult, I always remind myself of so many great members turned friends that I've made through this journey. And every year for the last, 5-6 years, we've been running something called Curves of the Year. So our members, we give them this name, Curves, sort of endearing name, and they're just amazing. So many of them have had really fantastic achievements. So we started running this campaign called Curves of the Year to celebrate their achievement, and we'll have a different theme every year. So these women come from all different backgrounds, and they're so willing to share. We're about to have our big party next month, where we will showcase these 12 ladies, etc. I always feel so energetic and high after meeting them, and that they're willing to put themselves out there as well to share their stories because they've been through some hard times, but they know that their story could help inspire other women. I've had other ladies who overcame depression and were so withdrawn, but then through the workouts, they've found themselves again, especially a lot of moms. So many great stories. These are the stories that keeps me going.
That's incredible. And I think a lot of times when we're deep in work and deep in the business, we get caught in that, like, all the challenges and like the fires that we're going through, and we forget about the people that are truly benefiting from all the work that the team and you have done together to create this community and create a safe space for people, and that has positively impacted so many parts of their lives. And not just from a health perspective, because we know that really spills over to many parts of their lives.
And then I see that with my team too, because sometimes it's frustrating, right, with the everyday stuff. But then I look back and I go, gosh, this girl, this manager couldn't have done this 2 years ago, 3 years ago, whatever it is. And now she's managing this, she's doing this. I feel so proud. Like, to me, that's part of strengthening women, is strengthening my team, because it starts at home, so to speak. Yeah.
Great. Wrapping up all of these, I guess we talked a lot about people. So maybe on the note of people, what are 3 things that you feel you would like to give as advice to yourself back when you first started?
Wow, what a great question. Wow, if I could talk to myself back then, I'd say don't do it. I'm kidding.
Like a hint of, don't do it, but a hint of, yeah, maybe not.
From where I stand now, advice to myself in regards to managing myself would be, hey, the journey is actually full of ups and downs, but it's going to be okay. Like, believe in yourself. Yeah, you'll figure it out. Yeah, that would be number 1 to managing myself. I think the core values and the corporate culture is very important. I wish I'd done it earlier and really had that in the DNA of everything. That's definitely key. And third is, I think, always equating it back to the end product, the joy you're bringing. So for me, it's not about the exercise per se, but for us, the mission is the stronger woman, strengthening woman. Our other thing we love to say, our other tagline is the power to amaze yourself. Because I think, having worked with literally hundreds, thousands of women now over the last few years, women, we can achieve so much, but we're also sometimes our own worst critic, and we put so much on ourselves, right? And we're like juggling so many things. I think reminding myself, reminding the team and our members that you can do it. Everyone can do it, and just focus on one step at a time. You won't realize, but you've become so much stronger a month down the line, 6 months down the line, years down the line. Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing all your insights, your experience, and your stories with us today.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been lovely
Thank
to chat with you.